It's Sunday, March 19th, 2017, and this is Dateline Wyoming, a public affairs presentation of YO Radio News. Join us every Sunday at this time as we highlight the issues and events that shape our lives here in Southwest Wyoming, featuring conversations with the people behind the headlines. Views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of YO Radio ownership, management, or our sponsors. Time will be made available for responsible dissenting opinion. And now, Dateline Wyoming. Our guest on Dateline this morning is Melinda Baas, Director of the YWCA Financial Empowerment Program. Dateline continues following this message.
Hey, at our startup, my team and I move at the speed of tech 24/7. Bottom line, I just want the news that matters. So where do I turn? My local radio stations. I want to hear from people who live and work in my town, people I know and trust. For the best entertainment, sports, news, weather, and traffic, anytime, anywhere, I stay local. Support your local stations. Text RADIO to 52886. Furnished by the NAB and this station. Message and data rates may apply. Apply stop, opt out.
Our guest on Dateline this morning is Melinda Baas, Director of the YWCA Financial Empowerment Program. Melinda, welcome to Dateline Wyoming.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about the program you run for the YWCA. It's financial empowerment. Explain a little bit about what that means and how it came into being.
The program is about 2 years old at this point, 1.5 technically. We started it after having realized, just by working with clients in our programs that we already have, with our domestic violence and sexual assault, with our child care programs, even with the Big Brothers program that used to be part of us, we were recognizing that a lot of people could really benefit from basic financial education. And I mean, this isn't accounting 101. This is building and starting a checkbook, learning to save money, learning to pay down debt, how to manage credit, how to plan for the future, how to take those basic, simple steps that a lot of us look at and go, where did we ever learn all those lessons from? Some of us might say school, some of us might say home, but most of us really just sort of picked it up as we went.
Subjects that maybe we're not really getting in school or any place else right now, are they?
Essentially, it's not one of the heavier focuses of it. I mean, the school has plenty of math programs, and they certainly have some general classes for that. But essentially, to sit down and say, okay, what do I want to look for? How much should I rent for? How much could I afford from this? When you look at college even, do you ever sit down and say, how much loans or debt could I afford? What kind of salary can I get out of this job? I certainly remember when I went to undergraduate, I wasn't looking at what the career would get me as far as salaries when I considered it, but it probably would have been a very good thing, or I wouldn't still have student loan debt at this point in my life.
Walk us through just a little bit how the program works and how you integrate that into the community.
Well, essentially what we've done is there is another program that the Family Resource Center runs that's similar with a set series of classes. And so we found that there was a gap where individuals could not attend those classes, thus we're not getting the benefit, either for the timing, the schedule, things like that. So what we opened our classes as, you give us a call and we will schedule the class around you. So I will do a one-to-one class, or if a group contacts us, say we work with Head Start or Climb Wyoming, we will do a program based on their class schedule. It's about a 3-hour program, sometimes a little bit more, depending on that. And we usually will work all the way through the basic education and then building a personalized budget. So we will actually sit down with a budget and their bills and say, look, here's how we can do this. Here's how we give you some recommendations to pay down the debts. Here's ways you can look for to help reduce these expenses.
So you use a lot of practical application as far as day-to-day finances for an individual or for a family.
Yes, this is not very complicated. We do not get into investing in the stock market or buying and trading or real estate. I mean, the most we're getting close to is some small business, because there are a lot more small business owners than you think. I mean, everyone from the hairstylist who actually rents her space and is actually a small business person to the gentleman who wants to sell and build backpacks. That is a small business. But they also have to consider all the practical aspects of this. So we tend to take a very practical approach. And we will very much sit there and say, look, let's look at your expenses and say, if you're getting internet at your house and internet on your phone and you're a single person, why are you paying for something twice? Why do you need it in both places? Is there one that you need more than the other? This might be an area you could reduce some expenses. This might be an area where you could save something. Someone considering bankruptcy looks at their bills and says, well, look, if you did this and this, maybe you could pay more of these debts. That might be an option for you.
And this is all part of the YWCA program overall.
Yes, this is. The YWCA nationally has really begun moving into the financial education, financial empowerment. Their focus on the national level certainly is on how women are not always the best at this. They haven't had as much experience, and they're now having to figure this out. We want to empower them to do this, to understand your finances. When you have a better grasp on where your money's going, even if you don't have much, it really is so much more empowering. It is so much more understanding when you're saying, I know where this is going and I know what it's doing. I know how much I can spend on this.
You're planting seeds for future generations as this goes too. It breaks the cycle, does it not?
Well, right. It very much says that we argue very strongly. I grew up, my mother had told me, if you don't pay the bills, you don't need to know the information. But we look at it very differently and say, well, look, aren't you as a parent wanting to teach your children this, wanting to give them as much education as possible to help avoid the pitfalls you walked into? So wouldn't it be better to give them this education early on? Start talking with the parents talking about their kids about the ideas of needs versus wants, about understanding patience, about planning for something, even if it's just planning for a new bike or a new video game. That idea of saving towards something teaches a very, very valuable skill in life.
Some very basics of financial management, isn't it?
Yes, we actually taught. Our YWCA offers a summer camp. We call it our day camp program that is offered in the summer for working parents that allows them to have their children in a somewhat structured setting, but not as strict as a traditional school because there's activities, there's games. And so we did Money Smart Kids for the summer. So the kids are averaging about 6 to 10 years old, and we sat down and worked with them on needs versus want. What is a requirement? What is not? We talked to them about recognizing what money was. I mean, learning to recognize quarters and nickels and dimes, learning to recognize the bills, learning to how many weeks is it going to take to get something. Each of the kids was given an allowance and they got to buy things from the store, but they had to learn to plan for it. If they wanted to save for store on Friday, they had to save their money for this.
You're actually involving kids as young as 6 years old.
For these kind of concepts, it's just as easy to start that. The more education you get on learning to wait, because really when you're teaching kids, think of it less as you're teaching them about money as you're teaching them values. You're teaching patience, you're teaching thrift, you're teaching generosity, you're teaching responsibility. Each of these can be taught with money, and it's something that the kids can very practically understand.
A little bit more about the camp. When is it and how is it
Our summer
structured?
camp runs from the first week after school gets out until about 1 week before school starts again. So this is a Y program that we've had all along. We've had this for at least 10 or 15 years that we've done our day camp program. And parents can certainly call and sign up for this. And then in this, we took about 1 hour each week and did the Money Smart Kids program. And so there was an additional element we did because we wanted to teach the kids the idea of sometimes your money can do good for others as well. The idea of donating, of sharing. And so they were raising pennies and donated it to the Humane Society. So then the Humane Society brought out several animals for them to come pet and play with. And that was their reward for having earned all that money for them. Because they earned about $100 in 6 weeks of just collecting pennies.
That particular camp actually runs pretty much through the summertime.
Right. The camp is not the money camp. It is actually just day camp.
Yeah.
The Money Smart Kids was just a piece we did within the camp because we wanted to integrate these concepts in every aspect of the YWCA programs.
Let's stop just a moment and talk a little bit about some contact information. If somebody's interested in finding out more about the camp, they want to have a child, they want to get enrolled, those type of things, where can they go for that information?
Well, for the general day camp program, and remember that's separate from Money Smart. That was just something we offered as part of the curriculum. But the day camp program runs Monday through Friday, roughly about 7 to 5. What you do is you contact the YWCA at 352-6635, and you can get your child on the waiting list for the camp. We don't exactly begin enrollment until much closer to the school year when we start determining who is available, how many spaces we have, things like that.
You run the financial empowerment program out of the YWCA facility?
Yes, I do. And so it would essentially be the same number. To get in touch for the classes, for the financial empowerment classes, either individually or if you have a group that wishes to do it, you would just call 352-6635, and you can just ask for Melinda or the financial empowerment program. Either one will get to me.
Do you have additional members of your staff that are working on that?
The financial program is primarily me at this point. So that would be the primary contact for that, and then I schedule that. Our day camp program is run through our childcare program, and that is Jen Vigers, who is our director of our childcare program.
And there's also a website, isn't there?
We do have a website, which is the YWCA-Sweetwater.org.
What sort of venues have you presented the financial empowerment program to?
Well, we have several what we call partnerships. These are groups that regularly contact us to do this. So we have one with Climb Wyoming. We have one with Head Start. We've worked closely with the Sweetwater Drug Court program. We have worked with the public housing program or city housing. We're one of their programs they've offered to exchange. We work with the Family Resource Center. We've also done individualized classes or specialty classes. We did a one-day class at the library, the downtown library, and then another one at the White Mountain Library. Those are the primary ones we've done. And then we've done a lot of individual classes. One person calls us and we set up the schedule for 3 hours of class. And that gets them a certificate. And actually, if you do the individual class and get all the way to the budget point, then you can earn a $25 chamber gift certificate, kind of as a reward. And we always joke about, what are you going to do with the money? What is your financial plan for your gift certificate?
You mentioned Climb Wyoming and some other projects going on in the area, but it occurs to me that the financial empowerment part of that is probably a very basic part of a lot of situations and a lot of issues that we're facing as a community. It
is very true. And this is not a program that's income limited or income driven. We want to make the information available to as many as possible. And we know there are hundreds of financial experts out there, books that you can read, websites that you can go to. But a lot of times what works better is that one-to-one talking with somebody, one-to-one working it out. So we looked at it as, if I can read a lot of these books and look at these experts and condense it into the basic points, that can help you sort through so much information at once and try to use it for your benefit.
And I think you're also trying to raise the awareness of the importance of financial planning in everybody's life.
Yes. And this is, like I said, it's not financially driven in the sense that it's only for those who don't have money. This is beneficial for anyone. My husband and I, when I first started doing this, put ourselves through the program and started doing it. And it really made a difference. We started paying down debt that we had just kind of always assumed would be there. That we just had this and you just dealt with this. And well, it was student loan debt. It was good debt. But it's still debt and you're still paying it. And so there's no reason to, if you make that plan and begin to take charge, decide, what do you want to do? We decided if we ever decided to retire, we didn't want to have a mortgage. We didn't want to have loans. We were going to get rid of those. And we wanted to get rid of them in enough time that we could actually enjoy time and enjoy having to spend our money the way we wanted to, not just on the bills we had to.
How did you become involved with the Financial Empowerment Program?
Well, originally we had begun talking about the idea when the Big Brothers program was part of the Y, because I really wanted to create a life skills program for the teenagers that were in the program. These are the 15 to 17 to 18-year-olds that were in there. And so often they're going out into the world without a lot of clear ideas. I mean, never having read a landlord-tenant lease, you're really at a disadvantage to what you're supposed to look for, what you're supposed to know about this. You've never had a credit card, but as soon as you turn 18, believe me, those credit card applications are going to start coming in. You need to be prepared for that. Needing to know how to manage your budget, how to plan grocery lists so that you had the food you needed when you needed it. Everything from making sure if you were going to play soccer in the fall, you had soccer shoes versus all of a sudden spending your money in the spring and you don't have any money. The Y nationally had already been doing this work. And so that kind of gave us the impetus to say, maybe we could do this broader. Maybe we could do this more than just that. Because essentially the Big Brothers program did separate from the Y. And we had already been doing some minor classes with the women that stayed in the domestic violence shelter. We decided it really was something that everyone could benefit from.
How many presentations do you make on average during a month?
It really varies depending. This month was a little bit more tricky because we have a fundraiser, so I have a lot less free time. Last year, the first year of the program was about 61 clients, either individual or in groups, and then another 10 to 20 when you included the summer day camp program and a couple 1-hour classes that we offered for specialties.
Dateline continues following this message.
Hey, at our startup, my team and I move at the speed of tech 24/7. Bottom line, I just want the news that matters. So where do I turn? My local radio stations. I want to hear from people who live and work in my town, people I know and trust. For the best entertainment, sports, news, weather, and traffic, anytime, anywhere, I stay local. Support your local stations. Text RADIO to 52886. Furnished by the NAB in this station. Message and data rates may apply. Apply stop.
Dateline Wyoming now continues with our guest, Melinda Baas, Director of the YWCA Financial Empowerment Program. You mentioned a fundraiser. Can we talk about that?
Oh, sure. That's a YWCA fundraiser that we have coming up.
Let's talk about what is that?
That is the Bowls of Caring. So it originally was the program called Bowls of Sharing that was started by individual volunteers, mostly through local color. And they were doing it in honor of Kathy Crabtree, who had died of Cushing's disease. It was kind of a memorial where these potters would make bowls and then had a soup dinner as the fundraiser, and then the money was given to local charities. Well, when those groups retired, they were going to just close the program. And the Y said, I think we like this idea. We want to keep it going and make it a YWCA program. So it became the Bowls of Caring. And so what we've been doing for the past 3 months is having bowl parties where people could make and decorate their own ceramic bowl that they could then come to our dinner on March 23rd.
As our listeners are hearing this, that will be this coming Thursday.
Yes, next week, Thursday. So you've got about a week. And we do have plenty of donated bowls. Unfortunately, all our parties are concluded and we're not able to have you make your own, but we have some beautifully donated bowls that'd be more than happy to sell you. You just come, it's $15. It gets you the ticket to the event and your own custom-made bowl.
And where's the event going to be?
The event is at the events complex. It's going to be 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock on the 23rd. There is soup, salad, bread, desserts, games for kids. There's raffle prizes. It's just a really great opportunity to hang out as a family or as a group and celebrate, as well as supporting the YWCA programs, because all the funds will go back to all of these programs the Y offers.
Let's talk just a little bit about where your funding comes from and what your funding is involved with for the particular financial empowerment.
Okay. Well, at this point, the Financial Empowerment Program is a part-time program, but it's funded through United Way. Originally, it was United Way that gave us the full grant to get the program started, to do the research, the training, to build our curriculum and our handbook that we give every participant. So the United Way had given us the primary seed money for this, and they still continue to support it. We also get money as the YWCA from Sweetwater County, and we get the support from them. And then there's also various state and local grants that we have had over time, some of them for just the program, some for the Financial Empowerment Program. And then we have our fundraisers. We have 2 major fundraisers, the Bowls of Caring and the Festival of Trees. And those are our 2 biggest events that we do as part of fundraising for our different programs.
Where would you like to see this program go in, say, the next 5 or 10 years? Are there things that you'd like to add to it or implement or do additionally as far as the financial empowerment?
Well, I've had a lot of different ideas of where I could see it going. I'd love to see it where employers in the community are willing to set that up. Some of the bigger employers that may have 10 to 20 employees could really benefit from just maybe having a lunch session where we could have a 1-hour discussion, talk to the employees, say, if you'd like this, we can schedule this for you, or do it the way we do with Head Start, where we do the 3-hour session in 2 different days as part of an event. Another option we began looking into, because I had been to a conference, was a Money Smart conference, where you would bring together a lot of the bankers, the financial folks, insurance, and have workshops where people could come for a modest fee and basically get a lot of questions answered. They could get some basic finance understanding. They could get small business tips. They could learn about the resources that exist in the area that they just never known about.
How much time do you spend on research and improving the information that the program is included with?
I would say I probably get a hold of any article I have. I have about 3 to 4 different kind of websites or blog posts that I try to keep track of that have financial information from experts that I watch to see what they're saying, how things are changing, what recommendations. I usually get maybe 2 or 3 books in a year that are financially based just to figure out what new ideas people have, where someone's going. You know, I've certainly read Beth Kobliner or Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman, some of the bigger names and well-known names in financial education. So I always try to do that as well, to stay on top of where new ideas and where the financial world is starting to go.
Do you kind of keep an eye on what's going on nationally, economically? A lot of times that impacts us on an individual basis, doesn't it?
Essentially, when you start doing this work, you start being a lot more in tune, and suddenly these articles will pop up and they'll catch more attention. The Congress started discussing the ideas of dealing with payday loans or rent-owns and managing those. That was definitely something we paid attention to, of what registrations and what legislation they're talking about doing and what changes they want, because that's a big area that affects a lot of people when you have those kind of loans. So we really wanted to understand that. When they start talking about court fines and fees and how those manage, I pay attention to that. And even when they started talking about different ideas, I even have a regular group post that I participate in and watch to keep track of people's suggestions, just general people's suggestions. How would you handle this? Somebody puts up a request as a college student saying, what should I know before I get out of college? And you get to read all the advice everyone else is giving and suggesting. And I can infiltrate those pieces into my classes.
Whatever is going on with the local economy as far as energy development and the job market and that type of thing.
Right. And it's certainly something to say. I mean, we would often argue that a lot of people talk about the 3 to 6 month savings fund. Well, in an energy-based economy like ours, where you have a boom and bust that tends to happen, 3 to 6 months may not be enough. You may have to look at that, particularly if your job is more transient or it has been more likely to be a layoff job where they've had layoffs. Well, let's consider this. Let's be cautious about what kind of big plans you make during the boom time so that you can get through the bust.
As you're talking to people and presenting these classes on financial empowerment, what do you see as one of the things, or maybe a couple of the things, that people are as mostly uninformed about?
The idea of thinking of a mortgage as, it was always called good debt. It was an okay debt. But then again, you had to look at it, and doing these classes suddenly made me say, well, it's debt. It's still a bill you have to pay. If you didn't have this, how much money would you have available? And that idea of saying, making a bigger effort, making a small sacrifice now in order to get to that point, that was one of the biggest things for me. I think one of the things that we ask the most of is just to help people be honest about what it is. We always have a fun exercise where we call it your triggers. What is that trigger that you walk into the store and you instantly see whatever it is, whatever store, and go, ooh, that's what I want? Getting people to recognize what it is, because no matter what budget you make, as soon as that trigger pops up, that could ruin your budget in 2 minutes.
If there was one thing perhaps that you'd like our listeners to know about your financial empowerment program, what would that be?
There was a really great quote I found, and I kind of consider it the motto of the program, is that make sure that what you're doing today makes your future possible. So whatever you do now has your future in mind. So whether it's why you're spending money on that new purse, why you're going out to dinner, why you're buying that new car, are you thinking about where it's going to be for the future?
As you've been talking to us this morning, I get the impression that the partnerships within the community are really important to your program.
Those are really important. Those we found have had the best success. You can offer a class on anything. I mean, the high schools are certainly an education that they have taught and taught and taught, trying to get these kids to understand things. And then some things just seem to go in and in one ear and out the other. The same with adults. We will be told these things. There's things out there. But having that relationship with an organization, be it Head Start with a good relationship with their parents, with Climb Wyoming and the support they have, with the Drug Court program that provides that support for the individuals, because it can be a reinforcement. Because they will have understood, they've sat through the classes too, and they can say, now remember, what about this? And remember thinking about this. Is that a need or a want? You know, we have great discussions about needs versus wants, and what really is that about that?
As these people go through the system, whether it's in a drug situation or a family relationship problem, if they don't end up with some sort of financial base when it's done, it really tends to make the situation even worse, doesn't it?
Financial problems have a way of making things much worse or much better. And they really can, because one thing leads to another. You have a flat tire, and that means you miss some work. Now the work means you don't have as much of a paycheck, which means you don't have as much income coming in. If there's family difficulties, things can be even more struggling. If you are low income, one paycheck can be a critical matter in your household. With domestic violence, there is always the problem there, as well as the idea that when the victims leave the relationship, they often haven't been the ones in control of this and haven't had a real good understanding of what they should do and how they should do it, because someone else made all the decisions. So this is giving them back that authority and that power and that confidence to say, you can do this. You can be in charge of this again.
You know, in talking with Sheriff Lowell about some of the drug problems that we're seeing, he said much the same thing about the entire program, that it's important for that program to have, while there is responsibility involved, but it's important to get people back into their routine as quickly as possible.
Right. It's the idea that you can go to a money retreat for a weekend and it's great and you can have all kinds of information and resources and great plans. But the minute you have to get up in the morning and your water heater's gone out and you have to figure out how to pay for that, all that great, wonderful retreat energy can go away if you don't have that good foundation, if you don't have it put into day-to-day life. What are you going to do with this? Thinking ahead. So when you say, we talk about having an emergency fund because you want to plan for the possibility that life's just going to happen.
Any final thoughts?
We definitely want to get the program out there as much as possible, and we want to encourage as many people as possible to get in touch with us, businesses, organizations. I'd love some of the big employers in town to consider this as an option for their employees, as an option for them to help them prepare. I mean, certainly having gone through it myself, I can understand that there's a lot I could learn, and there was a lot of information that I can pick up.
I would assume that is a situation where you feel like many times you learn as much as you teach.
There is definitely that. And I will always pick up tips every once in a while from employees. They will often give me ideas. Clients I work with will give me ideas of, oh, here's a new app that you have. That's the newest tool. There are so many neat apps out there can do a lot of shortcuts for you. Everything from budgeting to management to coupon apps to search apps. All these things can really do a lot for helping you manage your money better. You just have to decide which tools are right for you.
Technology has changed the financial landscape quite a bit, hasn't it?
It has. I mean, in general, the overall financial landscape has really dramatically changed, and I never realized it until I started reading some of these articles. Back in, let's say, my grandparents' day, for one, you paid cash for just about everything. So there wasn't an issue of credit cards or debt. You mostly had a store account if you had anything. You know, the local downtown store had an account for you that you paid at the end of every month. Your retirement was a pension that was paid under your employer. It was set up that way. You just took care of it that way. Now it's back to credit cards, it's online shopping, it's going to the mall on weekends for entertainment, and as well as the fact that your retirement is now yours. It's an IRA, it's a 401k, it's something you have to contribute to that's not just done for you anymore.
Let's maybe run past that contact information one more time.
Certainly. To get in touch with me, you can either do me by email, which is Melinda, Melinda, at YWCASweetwater.org, or you can call the YWCA at 352-6635.
Melinda, thank you for coming in this morning.
Well, thank you for having me.
Our guest on Dateline Wyoming has been Melinda Baas, Director of the YWCA Financial Empowerment Program. This is your host for Dateline Wyoming, Tom Ellis. I'll be back following this message with my take on today's program and a look at our guest for next week.
These days, it's easy to have information overload. Sometimes I just want to kick back, hear my favorite music and the news that affects me. That's why I stay tuned into my local radio station. When important news happens in my part of town, I hear it from them first. For the best entertainment, sports, news, weather, and traffic, anytime, anywhere, I stay local. Support your local stations. Text RADIO to 52886. Furnished by the NAB and this station. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out.
And now, here's my take on today's program. When it comes to basic household or personal financial management, many young people, and older folks as well, could benefit from the YWCA Financial Empowerment Program. This program provides critical information and training for those who have not had the advantage of exposure to the basics of managing a budget and how to use credit. We should all applaud the YWCA for its efforts to improve the quality of life here in Southwest Wyoming. And that's my take on today's program. Next week, our guest will be State Senator John Hastert, Senate District 13, with a recap of the recent Wyoming State Legislature. That's next week on Dateline Wyoming. You have been listening to Dateline Wyoming with your host, Tom Ellis. Dateline Wyoming is a public affairs presentation of YO Radio News presented every Sunday at this time, highlighting community issues and events that shape our lives here in Southwest Wyoming. Views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of YO Radio ownership, management, or our sponsors. Time will be made available for responsible dissenting opinion. Audio copies of this program will be available each Monday following the program's airtime on Sunday at youtube.com/YO Radio.